You ever hear the saying, don't judge a book by its cover? Well, my HOA learned that lesson the hard way. One quiet Tuesday morning, I woke up to a bright orange sticker slapped on my windshield. In bold letters, it read, "Remove junk vehicle immediately." But here's the twist, my so-called junk car wasn't junk at all. What they didn't know was that under that dusty tarp sat something worth $2 million, and this was only the beginning. The morning after that bright orange sticker showed up on my windshield, I thought the whole thing was just a mistake, maybe some overzealous HOA volunteer who didn't know what they were doing. But by lunchtime, I realized this was no misunderstanding. My phone buzzed with 3 emails from the HOA board, each one colder and more threatening than the last. The first one read, "You are hereby notified that the vehicle parked at your property violates Section 14, subsection C of the Community Appearance Guidelines. You are required to remove the vehicle within 48 hours or face a $250 fine per day." The second email was even worse. It claimed they had received multiple complaints from concerned neighbors about my junk car and warned that if I didn't comply immediately, they had the authority to tow and impound it at the owner's expense. And the third email? That one wasn't even a warning. It was a final notice, a curt, one-sentence threat: failure to comply will result in legal action. I stared at the screen, half amused and half furious. Legal action? Over a covered car in my own driveway? I knew I had to keep calm, though. The less they suspected, the better. What the HOA didn't know was that the junk sitting under the dusty gray tarp wasn't just any old car. It was a 1967 Shelby GT500, a rare collector's piece, one of only a few hundred ever made. To a casual observer, it looked like a forgotten relic, but to car enthusiasts, it was worth over $2 million. I bought it years ago from an estate sale and kept it carefully stored, maintaining it meticulously under the cover to protect it from sun damage and nosy neighbors. I never flaunted it. I never drove it around the neighborhood. It wasn't about showing off, it was about preserving a piece of history. But apparently, the HOA didn't care about history. They cared about control. Within 24 hours, they mailed an official-looking letter to my house, stamped with big, bold red letters, "Final warning." And this time, they gave me an ultimatum: either move the vehicle immediately or face property liens. I knew then that this wasn't just about a car anymore, this was about power. They wanted to make an example out of me, to prove they could bully anyone into submission. Little did they know, I wasn't just some random homeowner with an old car. I had something up my sleeve that was about to flip this entire situation upside down. And when I revealed the truth, it would leave the entire HOA board stunned, and speechless. 2 days later, just as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I heard footsteps crunching on my driveway. When I stepped outside, 3 members of the HOA board were standing there, arms crossed, clipboards in hand, and scowls carved into their faces. At the front was Karen, the self-appointed enforcer of the HOA, the kind of person who treats community rules like the 10 Commandments. "Sir," she began, her tone dripping with superiority, "we've given you multiple notices, and you've ignored every one of them. This," she jabbed her pen toward the tarp-covered car, "violates our guidelines, and you're officially in breach of contract. You have 24 hours before we tow it." I smiled calmly, leaning against the railing. "I'm not removing the car." Her eyes widened like I just confessed to a crime. "Excuse me." "You heard me," I said evenly. "The car stays." One of the other board members, a tall guy in a polo shirt, tried to chime in. "Look, we're just trying to maintain property values here. The neighbors are complaining about the eyesore." "Eyesore?" I chuckled, cutting him off. "That eyesore is worth more than every single car in this neighborhood combined." They exchanged skeptical glances and smirks. Karen rolled her eyes. "Don't try to bluff us. If that thing was worth anything, you wouldn't have it rotting under a tarp like that." That was the moment I decided to turn the tables. I slowly walked over to the car, the board members watching with smug amusement. With one quick motion, I yanked the tarp away, and there it was, gleaming under the fading sunlight, a pristine, fully restored 1967 Shelby GT500, candy apple red with black racing stripes, polished chrome, and a rumble that could wake the dead. Karen's jaw nearly hit the pavement. "This," I said, gently patting the hood, "is one of fewer than 300 left in existence. Last auction price? $2 million. The silence was deafening. One board member actually stammered, $2 million. But I wasn't done yet. I leaned in, lowering my voice just enough to make them uneasy. "And before you start drafting any more threatening letters, you should probably double-check your property maps." Karen frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" I smiled slowly. "Because as of last year, thanks to a quiet little real estate deal, I own the parcel of land this block sits on." Their smug confidence drained instantly, replaced by something I hadn't seen before, fear. And this was only the beginning of their nightmare. The next HOA meeting was supposed to be my judgment day. Karen sent out an email blast to the entire neighborhood, claiming I was refusing to comply and lowering property values. She even invited residents to attend, hoping to humiliate me publicly. But what she didn't know was that I'd been planning something much bigger. That evening, I walked into the clubhouse packed with angry homeowners. People whispered as I passed, shooting me dirty looks. Karen stood at the front like a queen addressing her subjects, arms folded, waiting for me to grovel. "Mr. Davis," she said loudly, tapping the microphone for attention, "this community values order and appearance. Your non-compliance threatens us all. If you don't remove that junk vehicle, we will seize your property under HOA bylaws." The crowd murmured. I walked slowly to the podium, setting down a thick manila folder. "Actually," I said calmly, "you won't be seizing anything." Karen laughed bitterly. "And why's that?" I pulled out the first document and held it up so everyone could see. "Because as of last year, I purchased Parcel 14B from the county. For those unaware, Parcel 14B includes..." I paused for effect, scanning the room, this entire block. The silence was immediate and absolute. I opened the folder and displayed the county deed, stamped and notarized. Gasps echoed around the room. A few neighbors leaned in to see the seal. One guy even whispered, "He owns the block." Karen's face turned red, her voice trembling now. This isn't possible. The HOA owns this land." I shook my head. "No, Karen. The HOA manages community rules, but you don't own the land under these homes. When the previous developer went bankrupt, parts of this property reverted to county ownership. And I bought it. Legally. Quietly. Permanently." Another board member tried to intervene. "That doesn't give you special rights." "Oh, it gives me more than rights," I said, cutting him off. "It gives me leverage. You see, under county law, any HOA enforcement involving my parcel requires my written consent." The room erupted in whispers. People who had complained about me now stared at Karen with suspicion. I stepped closer to the microphone, lowering my voice so everyone leaned in to hear. "So before you threaten me again, Karen, you might want to remember who really owns the ground you're standing on." Her confidence shattered right there. For the first time since this feud began, Karen had nothing to say. But I wasn't finished yet. I had one final surprise, something that would change the HOA forever and leave everyone questioning who truly had the power in this neighborhood. After the HOA meeting, I thought things might finally calm down. But I underestimated Karen. Within 48 hours, she fired off yet another violation notice, claiming that even though I owned the land, I still had to comply with HOA rules for the good of the community. That was her final mistake. The following week, I invited the entire neighborhood to a special meeting, one that wasn't organized by the HOA, but by me. I booked the largest hall in town, sent out formal invitations, and even brought in a county land officer to explain the situation legally. When residents showed up, the mood was tense. Karen sat in the front row, arms crossed, ready to fight. I took the stage and clicked on a projector, displaying maps, deeds, and county records for everyone to see. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, I didn't just buy parcel 14B. I also secured easement rights for the roads, utilities, and common areas on this block. That means, legally, the HOA cannot enforce rules on my property, and, technically, neither can they on several of yours. Gasps rippled through the audience. Karen shot up from her seat, shouting, "You're destroying this community." I shook my head calmly. "No, Karen. I'm protecting it. The HOA has been abusing its power, issuing fines, threatening liens, and harassing homeowners who simply want to enjoy their property. That ends today." The county officer stood up next and confirmed everything. "Mr. Davis's ownership of this parcel is legally valid," he explained. "Any HOA action involving his land or any homeowner within this easement requires his approval. In other words, the HOA has no authority here without him." That was the moment the room erupted, but not against me. Homeowners who had been bullied for years began confronting the board directly. People shouted about unfair fines, harassment, and intimidation tactics. Several demanded Karen's resignation on the spot. Others started asking me if I would consider forming a new community association, one that actually listened to residents. Karen tried to shout over the chaos, but her voice was drowned out. For the first time in years, the HOA had lost control of the room, and they knew it. As the meeting ended, neighbors shook my hand, thanking me for standing up to the board. Some even offered to help draft new guidelines. Ones that respected property rights instead of abusing them. I walked out of that hall knowing the war was over. My so-called junk car still sat proudly in my driveway, shining like a jewel under the sun. The HOA, once feared and untouchable, was now on its knees, scrambling to recover what little authority they had left. Sometimes, power isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, it's about knowing what they don't want you to know. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare like this, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking HOA case files.